Harrisburg Revitalization, education first. Now, before I start and get into the slideshow, I just want to introduce myself. I am Daniel Jackson, but I want to tell you about the history of Daniel Jackson. And I think if you know about my history and my past, then this is going to make a lot more sense as to the perspective that the slideshow is coming from. Right? So, first and foremost, I'm born in Fort Polk, Louisiana. I'm a military brat. My father did about 26 years in the U.S. Army. He was Signal Corps. So I moved around a lot, right? We're originally from a place called Jackson, Alabama. That's about 35 minutes north of Mobile. So if any of y'all ever heard of it, it's very small, Clark County. But I actually grew up here in Augusta, Georgia, right? And I grew up here in Augusta, Georgia because my father was Signal Corps, right? So my formative years were spent in the Richmond County school system. Schools like Monticello, Morgan Road, Spirit Creek, Glen Hills Middle, and then I attended ARC's, Academy Richmond County, for 1 year. Now, after that 1 year, I dropped out. A lot of reasons that goes to that, but that part of the story is I was a dropout, right? Now, part of that's going to make it a little interesting as I dropped out, that I was a straight A student when I dropped out. Right? So anybody that knows me knows that I was a gifted student the entire time I was in, I was in Columbus, Georgia for a little bit, going out there, and I was gifted here at Spirit Creek, so I was always a straight A student. So to that point, I dropped out 13 years old. I did not go back to school. I sat at home and did a lot of different things. We'll go ahead and talk about that afterwards, what I did in that time frame, but just know that it wasn't school, right? To that point, 17 years old, I got my GED, and I went into service. 17 years old. Now, service is a lot of things, 2 deployments to Iraq, went through a lot of stuff. I was Signal Corps the entire time, 20 years. It just so happened, I was blessed enough to have a successful career to the point that I got the Chief Warrants, right? And the last job that I had in the U.S. Army just so happened to be at a 4-star command where I was developing concepts for the future fight. So when we start talking about competition with our near-peer adversaries, that was my work. Talking about China and Russia and all that stuff, and what are we going to do in the future, and all these big systems that we're building for the future. That was my baby. As a chief warrant officer, I was the technical expert that all of the executives within the military would come to for advice on those particular concepts that were developed. So, fast forward, after retiring, I was recently, my last job, paying job I would say, was I was the vice president of a government contracting company. So to that point, I went back to the 4-star command as a civilian, and I was then leading experimentation, which that's a big thing right now, is experimentation in the U.S. Army, right? So just to give everybody a little tidbit of why that's important. How you doing? Welcome. Just give everyone a tidbit of why that's important. Experimentation is what we utilize in the U.S. military to drive the future systems that we're going to utilize, right? So it's just saying, if I want a system and I want to put that system into action, the first step is going to be, does that system work? Just test it in the environment where it works, right? So just give everybody a ticket. So I was that guy behind the scenes, evaluating the systems, coming up with concepts. All right. So coming back to Augusta, Georgia. Here in Augusta, Georgia, I don't think I have to go into depth. I think that you have 2 sides of this equation, right? And I say Augusta, but I should say CSR, because I grew up on the Richmond County side, Twin Oaks, Tobacco Road. That's most of my formative years, somewhat Fort Gordon. But it is night and day between Richmond County and Columbia County. I'm just gonna put that out there. Take it how you will, but that is a fact that I've known personally. My daughter's currently going to Columbia County, right? So I can see the night and day difference between school systems. Right? So that is also a factor. Right? But coming back to the story, now I'm here and I am coming to both of these counties and seeing school systems from inside. Right? Because when I was with DOD, my only mission was exactly what I just explained to you. Coming up with concepts and systems. It had nothing to do with children, right? But it had to do with the future. Right? And so if you see, once I stepped into the school system, I started to learn about career technical agriculture education. I said, okay, wait a minute. So I've been working on the future. The kids are the future, and that's when the wheels start to turn, right? So with that, I'm going to get into this, and you're going to start to see my perspective come alive, right? And once again, this is my perspective from a culture. When you start talking about cultural awareness, this is where I think when I start to talk about these slides, the community, well, I always like to say there's 3 different Augustas. I live in all of them because right now I live in River Island over in Evans, right? But like I say, I've also lived in Twin Oaks, right? I've lived in Grovetown, right? I've lived in a lot of different Augustas. It's different everywhere else, so just keeping that in mind. Any questions before I jump into this? All right. So this is the agenda. I kept it real short because I'm talking more. I want a lot of conversation. If you have a question, please ask because I want everybody to get the full understanding of why all this is so important. So I'm going to talk about the community dilemma. The community dilemma just means, when I say community, it can be this community, it can be any community. Because what I really want to get out of this, or what I want everyone to get out of this is not just an issue that's here or here in Harrisburg. This issue actually is persistent everywhere. Right, so the things that we can do here can be easily picked up and moved to any other location. Right, so the solution, I'm going to go over that. The CTA vision, proposed pipeline strategy. I know we have pathways here, and then I've actually done a lot of reading on pipeline. I'm going to bring that up later as well. But my pipeline strategy is going to be a little bit different because I'm actually trying to force the issue, right? And it's only because of national security. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Real problem. So I didn't want to give away my next slide, but yeah. So the community dilemma. If everyone can't see this, I'm just going to point. I'm going to kind of talk about each one. So up in the top left is a circle for business. Top right is federal government. Here is state, local government. Here is tertiary or secondary education, or post-secondary education, and industry. So in the center of this, you're going to see citizens / parents and K-12 education. All right, this depiction, what I want everyone to get out of this is what matters, right? At the center of all this stuff that's happening out here, right? This is what matters, right? So starting here at federal government, I'm going to tell you right now, being a 20-year soldier, being a warrant officer, there's 2 things that's going on right now, and it's going to continue to persist, and all the executives know it. One, you're having trouble retaining talent like me, right? Warrant officers. We get big money when we leave, right? We go get paid, right? So, I mean, nothing against that, but there's a lot of people when they get out of the military service, right? So you have trouble retaining. Increasing recruitment. When I was coming in the military, they were offering us big bonuses, right? And for a while, that kept going, and then it stopped because they didn't need to recruit anymore, right? Now, here's the issue. Now you need to recruit again, and you're offering big bonuses again. But here's the problem. A lot of people are disenchanted with the military. And that, I'm going to get into that why, but I just want to make sure I point out that issue. That's part of the dilemma from a federal government standpoint. And there's a lot of other issues. As I talk about these, just know that these are not the exclusive issues. But for this particular scenario that I'm going to be depicting, that is a major issue that we want to try to solve because everything here is going to be connected through national security. And I'll wrap it all together and tell you why. All right, so down here in this quadrant, state and local government. If anybody that's familiar with the 16 critical infrastructure sections, 16, anybody ever heard of that? The 16 sections of critical infrastructure. So we're talking about food, we're talking about health, we're talking about finance, everything local. And you start talking about, like, let's say the Colonial Pipeline. Everybody heard about that hack? Right, so we're talking about systems that are local that will become really controlled by your state and local governments, right? So that's what we mean by critical infrastructure. And then violence. Violence, any form of violence, domestic violence, gun violence, all those different things. We deal with that, and actually, you can kind of put that in different areas, but it's really going to impact the state and local government level. All right, the tertiary education, the curriculum. Now, I'm going to dig into this one just a little bit really fast, because this is going to be very critical in the pipeline. So curriculum, what I notice is that it is definitely not tied to what the federal government is doing, right? Like I say, I've been in there for the federal government for 20 years. I see where they're going, right, with the future. And right now I can tell you that the curriculum that I've seen, actually went into the CTAE website to look through the different career clusters. It is not matching up with what the future of DoD will be. So anybody that knows anything about the way funding flows in the U.S., a lot of that money is going to go to the federal government, and then it's going to go to building those systems of the future. And if you're not teaching and training on the systems of the future, your children will be behind. Does that make sense? So that's why that's very critical. And then the funding piece. Every school, I would say university or college or technical college I spoke with, it's always a game of finding the funding, right? It's always like, hey, well, we'd love to do this, but where's that money coming from, right? So it's a problem that's here, but once again, it's a community issue. All right, and then the industry. I got Gus here. Some of the warrant officers are going to be here in a little bit, and you can attest to this, Gus. Longevity and competition. There's always a lot of red tape on the DoD side, and it's definitely a lot of red tape for our industry counterparts. Because one, from the longevity standpoint, in the future, 2035, 2040, we're already tied to certain corporations. That's a known fact. There are certain corporations that are going to be building ships and big space systems for the next 20 plus years. They got their money. They're going to be. So we're talking about those other companies that are trying to win contracts right now. It's a very long and arduous process to get a contract from the U.S. government, right? So it's of course it needs regular competition, right? So every company that's out here that means a lot to the overall enterprise, they're trying to ensure that they meet their stakeholders' return on investment, right? That's what they're worried about. So a lot of times, it may look as if these corporations don't want to get involved, but that is their holdback, right? Because they always have to make sense from a business perspective. I'm not mad at them. Dr. Gary was just talking about capitalism, right? That's what we're building. All right, so then at the top businesses. Everywhere I go, we have a lack of talent. There's a previous slideshow that I shared with a lot of people, not sure if you've seen it, but I focused in a lot on the tech talent gap that currently exists here in the United States of America, actually across the world. And it's actually projected in the future to cost us billions of dollars, right? Billions of dollars due to all the unfilled positions. I think just for cybersecurity alone, it was $2 billion currently. President Joe Biden just brought that up the other day, where he's like, how do we have 2 million cybersecurity, open positions? And that's just cybersecurity. So talking about that, that's huge for businesses, and then of course the stability. Now, what does all this mean? These are all issues that I believe, or I'm sure, can be solved if you get K-12 education correct. Right? If you can get this correct, all of this will take care of itself, right? And not only that, what I will say is each one of these things will assist each other because there are resources aplenty throughout all these different sectors, and that's what I'm going to be showing on the next slides. Make sense? Any questions on this slide? All right. Okay. What I do as a solution is the Technical Career Academy. And I'm glad the representative from TCSG is here. Oh, I'm sorry. We're hiding back there. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to put you on the spot. Not like that. I got you on. But so Career Academies, TCSG, Dr. Willis kind of informed me about it. She said, hey, look into those things because they already have them all throughout Georgia. And I was like, oh, okay, so we already got a template. And as I read in the TCSG, I was like, man, they got some, okay. But her vision, all it is a souped up version, right? That's all it is. All I'm doing is taking the Career Academy concept and saying, hey, we actually have programs from DoD that can boost that, right? And I'm going to go around and just kind of talk about those. But then you also have resources aplenty outside of that we can draw to that Career Academy. Because once again, we're always looking for the resources. So everyone, it can be a great idea, but where are the resources coming from, right? So I just want to drill down into these really fast. So JRTC programs, we all know about JRTC programs, correct? Anybody in this room that doesn't know about JRTC programs? Okay, cool. So what's happening now is Army Cyber Command, our neighbors here on Fort Gordon, they are leading a program, a pilot program where they just started putting out cyber JRTC programs. And with that, cyber JRTC programs are 9th through 12th grade, where the Army, well, not Army Cyber Command, U.S. Cadet Command, they provide laptops, they provide uniforms, they provide the full shebang to the school, and a lot of other resources. I actually have a pamphlet I can't out. But the point of that is they're teaching skills that are critical, like CompTIA A+, Security Plus, and Network Plus at the high school level. At the high school level. And what that's doing is, one, is of course it's going to boost recruitment, right? Once you start to train people and start exposing them to things, but also it's going to start to fill those critical slots that DoD needs, right? And to be honest, it's not just DoD. I talk about the local infrastructure. Banks, pipelines, need these critical skills. I have not walked around town, I can tell you that. But I can tell you, I can pretty much guess that every company that's in this city probably needs some help from the cybersecurity, networking, AI, ML, cloud, so on and so forth, right? But we actually just need to do an overall assessment. I honestly believe everything's an assessment, but I won't go into that. Let me just drill down into these. I don't want to get off the topic. So JRTC programs. With that, now Cyber just started this. One of my recommendations to DOD is that, well, why do we just have a cyber JRTC program? Why don't we have a space JRTC program, right? Why don't we dig further into those other competencies that we know for a fact are going to be landing spots for our children where they can actually make a good living going forward, right? Because at the end of the day, what we have right now, and once again, I hate trying, people they just say that I've been kind of stomping on the school systems. I'm not. What I want to say is that teachers are overworked, right? Teachers are underpaid, right? And a lot of the things that the students, or kids, I would say, in these particular areas like Harrisburg, what they need is they need mentors. They need counselors. And I'm going to talk about that a lot. And that discipline, the values that they're missing from some of these schools that I've been in, that can be brought back with our partners from Fort Worth. I promise you that. There's a lot of people, a lot of mentors, counselors. I'll dig into that a little bit, talk to the sergeants about that, but those JRTC programs, once again, it's still a lot of value to these kids, but it's also going to give them some opportunities that they would not have had, beforehand. So military community service. Every base, not just Fort Gordon, has a community service, right? And then with that community service, we have soldiers, plenty on Fort Gordon, that do volunteer work all the time. Now, why is that important? Why? Because I've been to Columbia County and Richmond County, sat down with both staffs for CTAE, and they both have the same complaint or the same issue. We don't have knowledgeable instructors, Mr. Jackson. Like, oh, okay, we have a problem with knowledgeable instructors that know all this IT stuff that you're trying to train, right? Or any other competency you're trying to train. Fort Gordon has no clinic, right? They're part of the community. So I know that Fort Gordon is an underutilized capability. And it becomes a thing where I can sit down with a sergeant major or a general for a Gordon, they're like, yeah, we're here to assist. But then it's more of me coming out and saying, hey, you guys want to come? That's the hard part. The hard part is getting everybody to the table for the general or the sergeant major to say, oh, absolutely, we just need instructors. Tell them when they need to be there, they'll be there, right? So that whole point, the military community service, they already have a huge database that a few ladies and gentlemen out of Fort Worth, they maintain. So if you have a school out here that just wanted certain people to show up and teach certain skills, you go to Army Community Service and they blast it out, and then you have the solution. So that's just once again, it's another resource. Ms. Fox is not here. I'll talk about it a little bit though. Applied Resource Corporation. So Arizona University has a concept where they have this ARC or ARC as they call it for short. And what it is, it serves as a go-between between DOD and the university so that the university can participate in getting funding for experimentation. Did I say that right? Yeah, it's short. Let's say that right, okay? So, example being, right now, United States Army Pacific, the command I just left, we have a bunch of soldiers that are planning for war at all times, right? That's what we do for it. We campaign for war. The experimentation side of it, or what we call the science and technology side of it, it usually bogs down a lot that we do in the military. So we try to create other commands like Army Futures Command and all these other things like, hey, someone go do this experimentation. My argument right now is you got a lot of smart people at the university level, right? And that's what a lot of universities like Texas A&M, I'm not sure if you've heard of the Brothers campus that they have out there. They combine 11 colleges and universities to make it a Brothers campus. Is it experimentation field or I would call it an experimentation facility, but really it's acres and acres of land, right? And they test or they experiment with hypersonic missiles and things of that nature out there on that land. Now, why is that important? Because now, through an Applied Resource Corporation or something like that, what you're able to do is that commander that is out, he said United States Army Pacific, instead of him using all of his soldiers to get at the experimentation, he can now hand that money that he would have been utilizing to a university and says, hey, figure out my problems, right? Now, why does that matter to us? Because Army Cyber Command is sitting right there. NSA is sitting right there. Cyber Center of Excellence is sitting right there. The network cross-functional team, who is responsible for the future of all technology when it comes to IT-linked things, right? They are also connected to Fort Worth. So a lot of the experimentation, this is just my opinion, being Fort Worth, I think that our universities, colleges, and all that here should be a focal point for all of that experimentation. Does it make sense to me? So from my perspective, I would want to lean towards standing up something like an applied research corporation somewhere here in Augusta that can actually take in those top secret and secret missions, let's call it, right? Where it's like, hey, we need you smart people in college to figure this out. That's something that our students here in the local CSRA area can benefit from, having that funding and having that mission, because with that mission comes jobs, right? And comes positions and things of that nature. Make sense? Okay, going on. Partnerships with local businesses. I would say that's self-explanatory, but it's really not, because it means a lot of things. The first thing I would say about partnerships with local businesses, that was actually Jesse Norman School Box. Oh, this is the Jesse Norman School. I was like, what's the name of this place? So Gary, he's actually over there. Great gentleman. Him and Dr. Willis, they actually created a partnership to basically combine efforts with teaching, right? A lot of times we always say, man, we need teachers, There are so many schools that I've been to out here in Augusta where you have individuals over at Cyber City Circuit, can't remember the name, but they teach certain things in IT. But it's an individual effort. And when I started to talk about community on the previous slide, that's what I'm saying, right? Like, we have so many resources out here, and we're trying to start an IT school. My question is, Army Cyber Command, you have these guys sitting in the Georgia Cyber Center that have no job. They tell me that. Ms. Jackson had no job. All right, and we'll talk to Lieutenant General Maria Baird. Hey, man, can I give you guys a job? Because it's a community effort, right? So, just trying to get to that point, because a lot of times, I think, once again, we go back to, well, what resources do we have here? I'm more about what resources do we have in the community to pull in. And it's just a conversation to make you come to the table. And oh, by the way, before I forget, CPA, Child Preparatory Academy, is already projected to be a recipient of the Cyber JRTC program in the year 24-25. Right, so Army Cyber Command as well as U.S. Cadet Command, they've already put that on the list. So those resources are already coming to CPA. Just want to put that out. All right, focused corporate investment. Going back to my guy Gus, and Gus, you can definitely attest to this. There are millions of dollars, billions actually, recently, that all the corporations like Cisco, Microsoft, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, I can go on and on for days. Big major corporations that are here for TechNet, by the way. These guys and gals invest billions of dollars. Now here's my argument. It's not focused, right? A lot of times it'll be $1 million for this particular thing, and how do we gauge that, right? How do we gauge that it's actually working? Where are the analytics in, right? So my argument would be, when I went through the CTAE website, looking at the different systems that are being taught, my argument would be that Cisco, Lockheed Martin, and all those great corporations, they should be at the table with our CTAE leadership in Georgia, right? Our CTAE leadership in Georgia should not, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, you have the flexibility to do what you want, but I'm going back to the federal level, where all the money flows. If it were Daniel Jackson, I would actually have these corporations on the table, and I would work with them to ensure that their curriculum, and all their resources are actually being utilized to teach our kids. So that's what I mean by focused corporate investment. Bringing them to the table and saying, hey, we have this for career academy, or we have this we want to do. We want to know that, and make sure those dollars, instead of being spread out so many places, really tell them exactly how we're going to get after the work. Increased parent community involvement. Now, this is definitely a big one for me, because the community involvement is, and the parent involvement is something that, especially talking about Harrisburg and other underserved areas. A lot of times, coming from where I come from, we did not have no parents, right? And then sometimes we did have that one parent was incapable of taking care of us, right? So a lot of times the kids in those underserved areas, when they actually come to the schoolhouse, they are not fully learning. And so part of the vision of moving into the CPA is having that second line of defense. It's great to have a counselor, right? It's great to have a counselor that can talk to the kids, but if you cannot relate to that child, right, like a mentor would, then we're going to be failing left and right. And I think that's what happens a lot with the Richmond County school system. Once again, just my opinion, it's perspective. But I think you have a huge shortage of mentors that they can look to, and a lot of those kids, they become disenchanted in the whole process. All right, but that's a whole big portion of it. Existing educational resources. I touched on this a little bit, but the thing we have at DOD, and I want to share this with all educators because, once again, first time meeting me, I am a resource that, let's just say I got a lot of information for no reason. Right? So, DOD, they actually have a plethora of different resources where they have programs, actually Cyber Patriot is one of the programs, right? It's under the DOD umbrella, but I'm talking about pages and pages long that they sponsor that we can actually get here in the local area. So that's something I've been talking with the Georgia Cyber Center about, bringing some of those resources in the technical campus. So this solution, the entire solution, is just saying, this is not inclusive, it's not all inclusive, I just want to put that out there. But these are all different resources that can come into a technical career academy, or CPA, turn it into a technical career academy. So transition assistance program. Now, this particular asset, or capability I would call it, is extremely underutilized because we have soldiers that are transitioning daily from all these bases. And they, once again, like I said, they go out and they get some of the jobs that pay the same as teachers. Literally, same. I've talked to a lot of them. They're like, a lot of times they're contractors, and then they get put out of work. They're sitting at home. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? I got a degree. I got this. I'm just waiting on this contractor job. How do we not tell them that we need instructors? So the Fort Gordon Transition Assistance Program and the Garrison Command Team have already spoken with them, and they want to start utilizing the Transition Assistance Program to actually get veterans back to the schoolhouse. I'm not sure how many of you saw it, but Florida just passed a law where they're making it easier for veterans to get into the schools, right? Because it's short of teachers. So with that military transition assistance program, we already have qualified instructors. You just need to start basically plucking them out of it, right? Make sure you show up, telling them that you need them. So yeah, that's a huge capability that can be utilized because we have transition assistance programs on every base, Navy, Marines, Air Force. The world-class facility. So over in Harrisburg, right now, Chandler Preparatory Academy is attached to the back of the church. There on Ellis Street. So that particular area, Harrisburg, is already going through a revitalization. So what we're looking at doing is utilizing that land, clearing out the older construction and trying to build some new construction, right? So we have a vision for that, but if I can just give you a visual with words, picture a campus with multiple buildings. In those particular buildings, you have different specialties that are being taught in each one, right? Like, just picture a room like this, where Cisco has their room, right? And it's a Cisco learning environment. I'm gonna tell you about Cisco. Cisco's heavy into networking with their switches and routers. Here on Fort Gordon, we have what's called Salton Hall, where when we go in there and train our soldiers, they have a lab. You walk in, you do your online work with Cisco, but then you have your hands on. So by the time, when the soldier leaves, the soldier is like, you close their eyes, like, hey, what, right? So we want the kids to have that same experience, right? We want the kids, by the time they leave high school, they need to be a benefit not only to the company that should be sponsoring that learning environment and sponsoring the path, but it also needs to benefit the community. Because once again, Cisco is everywhere, just like all these other guys are everywhere. And going back to their issue of longevity, I don't even know why. This is just me talking out loud, folks. There are already people here that are not going anywhere. That's just my point. And a lot of red tape comes to the play where it's just like, hey, well, we don't know what we want them. Well, you're already tied to them for the next 20 years. You might as well do this. That's just me being very good. But school system, and I dropped out and nobody cared. So I'm just going to tell you, lost talent is a real thing because for me to make it back to DOD and then be able to do the things I did for DOD, I could have been non-existent. That's the point, right? So there's a huge talent pool. I think we talked about it before in the last slide show. I think it's a 75% graduation rate somewhere around there. We got 25%. That's just at least 25% that are being underutilized right now. Talent that's out there is just being wasted. So great point, Dr. Willis. And I talked about gold events. So generations of leaders developed in Augusta, Georgia. We got some events that we're trying to plan to actually provide an uptick to that engagement between community leaders, parents, and also students. Once again, students, they come to class every day, they talk to teachers, they go home, right? But a lot of times, they've never seen the mayor. A lot of times, they've never seen the superintendent. A lot of times, they've never seen the social support board, right? That's the problem. Because kids, what they see is their reality, their perspective. My perspective, living in Twin Oaks, right? Living in Twin Oaks, I know nothing about the world until someone came to me to tell me. And so that's one of the biggest issues that I see is us giving people, professionals, out to talk with these kids so they can see what they see is what they believe. All right, and cultivating workforce talent. This is actually a national defense strategy goal, right? So the national defense strategy being the doctrine that we follow that kind of plots our future from a military perspective, and actually the national perspective on how we're going to defend the nation. In the national defense strategy, it points towards cultivating workforce talent, which is tied directly towards our doctrine here in Georgia, which is CTA. So it's the same goal to cultivate workforce talent. I'm just listing it out that why, like, every child should graduate with an introductory education. It's not just IT, culinary arts, right? I see a lot of kids that make it to 18, and the parents say, my child doesn't know what they're going to do. And then we're lost at that point, right? Because if you're 18 and you're graduating, you don't know what you're going to do. That's the problem. So this next slide, I'm actually going to go into exactly how I would do it. Once again, it's proposal, if I have to listen to David Jackson, I'm just that person. But I'm putting ideas out there that, maybe works, maybe doesn't. Before we move there, this is all I did was listed out the Army values. I think the Army values, well, the Army instilled a lot of values into me. These are the ones that they put into me. It made me I would say, a productive member of society. Because my job out here, I'm not very productive, I can say that. But this made me productive, and I know it can make kids at our school productive, particularly CPA. All right, and then, that's all that, right? Ensuring the students understand their importance to the overall success of the community. A lot of times kids don't know about anything unless you tell them, right? So if I don't explain to a kid what a career is, right? When they see Mr. Jackson, they say, well, Mr. Jackson, how did you get there? I love to sit down with kids and break it down to them. And I say, hey, it took me 20 years to get here. Let me break it down to you how you can get there in 10 years, right? It's all about passing knowledge down. So ensuring the students understand how they can fit into the community. Any questions on this one? Right. Gonna get to the community consist of from kindergarten all the way through K to 20, right? But the entire background has to make sense. And so I'm going to get to that in a second. But to a few of the points that you made, the academics versus career, because this one, I talked about this earlier, about, I'm sorry. The campus wanted to have extracurricular activities like performing arts and sports. I am a very huge fan of having different programs like boxing programs and after-school basketball, things of that nature for the kids. And so that's that part. So going back to what we were just talking about, academics versus career. So the vision for CPA is having a side where you have your traditional academics. And I believe that you said, there's a school in Macon called how?
It's Hutchinson Academy.
Hudson. Yeah, so they have a very good example there, and if you're familiar with Helms College, this is kind of similar. But the one that she was referring to in Macon, where students will go in the morning, they'll do academics, and in the afternoon they'll do career skills. So that is a certain template that can be used, but what we heard Gus was talking about earlier, partner with industry and DOD to attract the best instructors. Me personally, I could have probably went to Microsoft or Cisco. And I think my vision would be a Cisco, they want to put the best out there, right? So they're going to want to train their instructors. My thing to them is, why wouldn't you just train someone from the community, right? Whether it be a veteran transitioning out from the transition assistance program, one of their spouses, or someone here, right, that actually has the aptitude. So that there is Cisco investing back into the community, into the talent pool, right? And every other corporation does the same. And then of course we talked about this already, seeking out resources within the community that can be absorbed into the academy. There's a lot of different people out here that are already signing up to come in to help Dr. Lewis teach. They've been teaching around Augusta separately this entire time, but bringing them in as a resource. All right. Moving over to councils and community support. support. Once again, we have a lot of counselors that I just think are outside of the school system. We have, I think someone told me this is the medical district for Georgia, right? So we should have a lot of professionals out here that do this particular thing. And so I think it's just really focusing in on an issue that underserved communities, those kids, or all kids really, I don't want to focus on underserved communities, but CPA is an underserved community, right? In underserved communities, if you ask me, that should be a priority. But all communities need it. I'm going to put that out there. But you have to get the resources to come into the education system. Because once again, me being a smart guy who teaches IT, the money is on the outside of the education system. So how do we entice individuals who would usually, of course, want to do something better for their families, right? Nothing wrong with wanting the money, but how do we entice them to get them back to education to get those skills learned? Now, if you ask Mr. Jackson, I just think you have to point back to the original slide, right? And then you have to get DOD to buy into the fact that, hey, you need to retain that talent, or maybe you need to redirect that talent to the schoolhouse. Because it's a combined effort, right? If General Maria Barrett, who runs, she runs Army Cyber Command, General Stan is the General for Cyber Center of Excellence. If General Stan were to say, hey, this is a national security thing for me, right? I want to make sure that all of my best soldiers, if they're going to go to Cisco, okay, Cisco, you pay them to come back and teach your class. Now you have a warrant officer like me that's teaching students. I promise you, those students are going to come out like super smart on that IT or whatever that they're teaching, right? Because that's what we do for a living. This is huge for me. Recruiting neighborhood elders that can assist with mediations and outreach to families and community. Coming from where I come from, I'll be 100% honest with you, a lot of kids are taught at home not to listen to teachers. To be honest with you. So to that point, if you don't have anyone that's in those neighborhoods that those people actually listen to, because I'm the only one that went to DOD for my family, I'm just going to tell you that. But I told you I dropped out, the people that dropped out with me, my brothers and cousins, are still in the streets. Right? So if you don't have those elders, guess who becomes those elders in the community? Those people that dropped out and are still in the streets. And that's it. That is the information that the kids are getting. So a lot of times, you probably want to know somebody in those neighborhoods that can get you through to those parents or those kids. That's just the fact of life that I've learned growing up in those neighborhoods. So I just want to put that out there because this is part of the CPA vision is for us to go out and make sure we make those connections in those neighborhoods. So this is what we were just talking about, pipeline strategy. So this is proposed. And this is actually, I took a lot of information from different people that I talked to throughout the city, whether it was over at Columbia County, Richmond County, so on and so forth. A lot of educators gave me a lot of knowledge. I'm going to give a shout out to Georgia Cyber Center, the young man over there, Dennis Norwood. He hit me with the first one. He said, Mr. Jackson, I think if you try to start anything in 9th grade, this is the point. He said, you are totally missing the point. Because if you're not touching kids in 6th grade, in middle school, not going to test because it's Morgan Road, Spirit Creek, Glen Hillsville. Yes. We definitely use that in those schools, but we could have used those schools, and I know our schools are using now, CPA too. But I would love to see cyber JRTC start in 6th grade, 4th JRTC. It's still in those values. But right now, they're only doing 9 to 12. But what I would say, the start of it, at least now, would be 6th to 8th grade, where we teach general skills. Because here's the thing, Cisco's not the only dog, right? Cisco has their own systems, and when I talk about competition, right? Cisco has competition. We're not trying to, X anyone out and say, oh, well, we're just Cisco. There's room and plenty for everyone. But the bottom line is, kids here, they should just be learning general stuff about IT theory, the history of the internet. Right? I got to get you to understand the why before I start to teach you about, the hands-on portion. So 6th to 8th grade, I think you can, and it doesn't have to be IT. I want to just keep technical skills. At that level, kids can learn culinary skills, they can learn aviation, they can learn anything. Trust me, DOD, we have resources to spend. Just got to ask, and we shall bring. Right? So that there. And then I think there's a decision point. Decision point, Bob saying, I believe, and this is just starting with CPA, right? We don't have one school, but I believe these technical career academies are actually, out there and you have different choices, or I would say multiple. I think you have a decision point, especially if it's in the community where I said that there were some parents that don't want their kids to be on track. That's fine. I think if you want your child to be free and probably be a photographer or something random out there that probably don't have a track for it, it's on that particular parent to decide what's the best for the child. But for most children in underserved communities, parents are always looking for a solution. My mama told me I was going to the military. Even though I was a strange student, that's all she knew, right? But if you give those parents opportunities, have my mom know, hey, Game's really smart, Cisco wants it, right? That's the conversation between Cisco, that school staff, and the parents and the student, right? To figure out, okay, well, we're living in Harrisburg, right? I mean, yes, Cisco, how much is that? Oh yeah, and guess what? That decision point, and sorry, I didn't want to go to this decision point from 6th to 8th grade. All this is just sending is a student going to 9th to 10th grade to get general theory and concepts, right? So once again, you talk general technical skills, whether it's IT, aviation, what have you here. But here is when I start to talk to you about things, let's say go back to Cisco, I want to talk to you about general networking, right? Now I want to take away the fluff of cybersecurity, I want to take away the fluff of data and cloud, because this is all here. I'm trying to teach you the whole gamut of IT. But I want to drill down to now networking, right? If you're here in my classroom, you want to be a networker, right? For 9th and 10th grade, I'm teaching those concepts. And there's another decision point. Because at that point in time, now you're going to get a specific path of certification. And once again, you guys have multiple certifications, right? So just within Cisco alone in the network section, and this is, everyone hears cyber all the time, right? Cyber is the word that we all use around here. But IT is the focal point. Because cyber, in my view, cyber is a very small part of IT. Right? So to that point, if I took IT, AI, ML, which is artificial intelligence and machine learning, I take cloud, I take data, I take networking, I take servers, I can go down this long list of skill sets that we need bad within DoD. That's when we put them on those individual tracks. 11th to 12th grade, because at the end of the day, we want them to graduate with certification. Something that they can attach themselves to, Cisco, local community, go to DoD, go to Army, what have you. And that's what I'm saying. This last decision point is a decision point that comes with family, it comes with the corporate sponsor that's sponsoring that track, and it comes with that student. When you decide, are you going? You're going to join the military, you're going to stay in a local community and probably work at the bank to protect, like you're a Cisco, maybe you're doing networks for a Regions Bank or something like that. Or you go into industry, Cisco has jobs all around the world. If you have a child that just doesn't want to be in Augusta anymore, trust me, Cisco will ship you somewhere. Germany or something, go view the world. But a big point of that as well is, I'm not sure, we'll put this name out there because I never got a chance to see him before he passed away. He was a big mentor of mine, Mr. Ellis Johnson. If anybody knows him, he spoke to me back when I was here as a warrant officer, probably about 2015, 2016. Anyways, what he told me was, we sat down and he was like, hey, what you gonna do, young blood, when you get out? And I was like, hey man, I'm gonna go to Atlanta, sir. And he got really disappointed at me. That's the answer we all do, right? Once we learn something and once we become it, we want to go to the city. That's a child. And he got upset and he was like, it's not the time. You guys learn all this information. You leave, you go, you learn all this information, but you don't bring it back home. That should, to me, that should be part of the program. Like, that's just a recommendation I would have to DoD. A lot of these soldiers, they come from our neighborhood. They get out, then they go somewhere else. Like, if we're informing them of the issues here, and I think enough of the soldiers I know that are from Augusta have enough time to come back here and do that. They know what. And so, everyone should be able to do that, but that's another thing. Once again, this conversation is good. Any questions on this one? This is the real world problems. So this is our last slide. But I'm going to just drill down to these just for a second, just for some fact that I look at K-12 education as a focal point. I just want to make sure everybody understands why I said it. I think we saw, I'll bring it up, but I don't like to talk about things like that. Veterans, once again, I believe in veterans and the credits that we run. Right? There are that's a lot of training, not only leadership, but weapons skills, all the things. Veterans are a deterrent. Right? In DoD, we like to call it defense in depth. You're not just going to win with doorlets. Right? You got to actually have trained people. And all I'm trying to say is, let's get the training skills. They teach kids, but also train protection. So I totally feel that if you get K-12 education right with bringing in partners that can help you solve that problem. Because right now, it's the school system's trying to figure this thing out. They're looking at resources they have. They're asking around, and I'm just like, Fort Gordon does what? Sodas. We need security what? If we have to come out to the soul, right? Of how we will protect, or if we actually have to put soldiers into class. You know, once again, I'm not a politician. I just gotta get my ideas and I just move on. But I know for a fact, K-12 education, that can be addressed. And a lot of this is education to the people, because childhood pregnancies, that one right there, it hits home because every sister I had kids before they did. I have 3 sisters. So all my nephews and nieces are about 10 years apart from me. So we can do the math. Right? I had a lot of nephews and nieces in the house with people I was growing up. So childhood pregnancy, from what I've seen, is just more of an education. If we speak to the kids about that in school, which again, teachers don't understand, right? They don't have time to do all these things. So trying to get this right in underserved communities, especially a place like CPA, should be a focus. But should be K-12 education everywhere. Inform the kids about that. Drug addiction. Same thing. We used to have DARE. I'm not sure they still do DARE. But going back to the counselors and the mentors, I'm telling you right now, programs that are in school are not enough. Because we don't listen when I say wait, I'm talking about kids. Kids do not listen to a lot of things we as administrators or staff put out in school. So once again, K-12 education, if we get this right, and I believe that there are several ways I can talk through, but once again, it goes back to the neighborhoods. It goes back to engaging communities. Actually, I'm going to put these two together. Because I'm going to drop drug addiction, and I'm going to tell you guys something firsthand about gang violence that I can tell you now. Why? Because I grew up around gangs. Alright, so to this point, a lot of these kids are not harmed out here anywhere in CSR. I talk to these kids all the time. They're viewed as threats, but they're really not. And I'm going to tell you how you turn them off. Be very honest with you. I know a few gentlemen over in Columbia County that were on the gang task force for years. And I talk to them all the time. They were building a house. And I was like, I wonder why we don't inform the kids that we know we're doing gangs. Right? Like, I read a lot of articles, and you would figure it's a setup. But there was a young rapper from Atlanta that just got charged with some stuff from back in 2014. And the only thing I can say to myself is, one, you're around the wrong people. But two, why don't we engage children? Because they don't know. They don't know. Like, they're doing things because they think it's cool. But engaging them at a young age and saying, I know. I did that at ARC, and you should have saw the look to that. I said, I know some of you are in gangs. It's horrible. And they were like, hey, how's it go? Yeah, I can look at you and tell. It's one of those things that's a deterrent. Because once they know that adults know, it's always a straight in the face. So they know. Right? But it's informing them that yes, you have potential to go to jail, or you have potential to actually have a successful life. You can make this decision at a very young age. These kids are smart. So I think it's education. Once again, talk to the kids. You don't have to lock them up. You don't have to wait till they mess up. Tell them up front, we know who you are, we're going to catch you. It scares a lot of kids. I'm just going to put that out there. So gang violence, drug addiction, a lot of things. I don't meet a lot of kids that they do it because they're innocent, but we can do a better job of deterring. That's what I'll say about that. I talked about these two earlier. China, Russia, DOD has a huge problem. Right? And I'm going to be 100% real about it. The fact that I was looking at the future on a day-to-day basis. I can talk very political about this. About the recent trip Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan and things of that nature. Houston, we have a problem. Because China is not playing, Russia's not playing. We don't look at it from that perspective here in the community. But I'm telling you right now, these people, and this is public information, building islands. they mean business when they deal with the U.S. They are offended, and to that point, I am a patriot. I'm also, a citizen, but I'm also first a patriot in all the things. So I'm telling you right now, we'll get this K-12 education right, those pipelines, and fix that tech talent gap. This right here is the biggest worry in Texas. I'm telling you that right now, because now we're worried about, oh, well, how does that look now that China is in charge? I don't want to scare anybody. That's not my point. What I'm telling you is I plan future. I see what we're doing by holding corporations back saying, oh, well, do we want them to train our? Yes. Yes, you want to close the tech talent gap on the U.S. side Because that is, going back to that first slide, that is a national security issue. Because, once again, you don't have anybody operating those systems, systems don't work, systems don't operate on themselves. And I talked about tech talent back then, you're knocking down, so I talked about that already. Gun violence, it's kind of attached to gang violence, right? At the end of the day, there are so many different things that we can do in K-12 education to educate kids. There are two sides to the equation, right? We got different groups that want to keep messaging, but our messaging just has to be strong. That's all I'm saying. As a community, I do not believe in the fact that I see young kids all the time. It's usually the 18 and 19-year-olds that are dying these days around the county or around the CSR. I see it almost every day. And I go back to mentorship. I go back to the examples that they see on a daily basis in the neighborhoods. And I mean, to be honest with you, they don't have a fighting chance because they truly believe the older mentors that they see in their neighborhoods. That's all I'm saying. So if that's their perspective, that the way that they handle business, if someone disrespects them to shoot somebody, I mean, they're learning from people. You know, it's more on music, but we're going to go there. Unemployment drop, that's also attached to tech talent gap, and then school dropouts, of course. Be personal once again. Had Dave Jackson known that, hey, there is a career out there for you, one that could pay you, that could be fulfilling, that could get your parents and your family into a better situation, Dave Jackson, the sixth grader, would sign up for that. Right? Dave Jackson, the sixth grader, would be this. I've had groceries since sixth grade at the counter and stuff like that, right? So, yeah, I just think it's a lot of decisions that can be made here at K-12 education, not only by parents with students, but then also the community. Come together to figure out how do we solve all those real world problems. And we do it here at K-12 education by throwing resources. More resources, I would say, because there's already resources there, but not enough.